to the Rest Podcast. So I'm excited that you're with us. Our intent is to find places where we can all just slow down a little bit of life, enjoy it a little bit more, and rest from the busy things that we actually have going on. So let's start our conversation today by just doing a check-in. You know, Jervy, let's talk to one another and begin to see how we're doing mentally, emotionally, and all things in life, and even physically.
Man, so
check in. How you doing?
Check in. Well, today I'm in a lot of pain physically. So I wouldn't say a lot of pain, but I'm in pain physically. And so yeah, that's a very real thing today that I'm dealing with.
I didn't expect that one. So.
Yeah. So I have, degenerative arthritis, and so there's times that it just does what it does, and those are the days, that I'm dealing with pain in my joints and various other things. So, yeah.
So how do you manage your pain as you go through life, and when you have these moments? Does rest even help, or is it not a factor?
Actually, it's a huge factor because I believe that it's important for us to find a place of rest in the pain. I think sometimes we think that we can only rest if there isn't any pain. But I found that to not be true. I think you can find a place of rest, in the pain if you look for it and if you're intentional, in finding that place. So for me, it's literally slowing down, praying, even in the midst of when, I'm hurting, I'm feeling pain, I want to talk to God, and I want to focus on the grace that is available for me in the moment. Mm-hmm. And that grace can be, family, friends, a sunrise, a cool breeze, just other things that I can focus on where, I can enjoy rest even in the midst of what I'm going through physically. Because if I were to do it the other way around and say, well, I'm only going to have rest if I don't have pain, then what's the other option? To just suffer through your pain? I mean, God's grace is sufficient. And so I think we can find, his grace in the midst of our pain, if we're intentional, if we look for it. And if we're intentional about actually, I guess residing in that space or abiding in that space.
Yeah. So I'm curious because I think I want to learn from this, and maybe anyone else who's watching it can also learn from it. So right now you say that you're physically in pain. Mm-hmm. How do you possibly, in a practical way, find God's grace in the midst of that pain?
It really does take some intentionality, and it takes us really, slowing down. For me, I'll say for me, mm-hmm. It takes me really slowing down and not chasing the rabbit of how can I get rid of my pain right now, mm-hmm. Because I know that what I'm dealing with, a pill may help me with the pain, but it's not going to solve the problem, mm-hmm. So this is something that I may, unless the Lord just heals me completely, I may have to deal with for the rest of my life. So I can't spend the rest of my life, chasing how do I get rid of pain. How do I enjoy Christ and enjoy all of the amazing moments that God has for me in the midst of whatever it is that I have to deal with.
Mm. Wow. Thank you.
So it's your turn. How are you doing?
When I think about my mental check-in, my emotional check-in, I think that I'm really well when I'm able to be present with others.
Yeah.
Wow. When I'm able to slow down, I'm able to have good conversations. I'm able to talk to people that I know love me and that I love them as well. And so I recognize like this week that I need to slow down much, much more in that regards. Specifically, immediate family, wife, mother, the sisters, those that I have great friendships with, recognizing that I need to slow down and just hear how the people that I love are doing in my life. And I recognize that I need to do that right now because I'm probably moving too fast and I feel probably too exhausted and maybe too tired to kind of do those things. And so it's a good mental check-in, good emotional check-in for me because I want to make sure that I am truly present, with those that I love and those who love me, at this time in my life. So, yeah.
So I'd like to ask, how do you slow down? Like, what do you have to, do in your life? What helps you slow down?
Yeah, I think it's some practical things. It's literally walking slower. Like I have to do practical things to actually slow down in life. I have to talk slower. I have to move my body parts slower, and instead of grabbing many things at a high pace, slowly grab something. Slowly walk to the refrigerator. Slowly grab a glass. Those are the things that help me to remind myself to slow down and be present. And not just moving forward in life. So,
wow.
That's my practical keys. As people hear us checking in with one another, and so maybe this is a good opportunity if you have somebody with you, if you have somebody that is in your circle, where you can start to practice some of these things of asking one another, how are you doing? And really wanting to know that answer, really wanting to know that question from one another, because I think it's vitally important that we slow down and just check in with ourselves. And to have somebody else on the opposite side of that conversation, really helps us to do it well, I think. So
it does. That actually, I think it also coincides with our topic today as well, right?
It does. It
does. That's a good practice.
It does.
All right, so welcome to the cultural segment of the podcast where we share news and advice on culture and ways to practically rest. I want to share with you about the multi-season series, The Chosen. It's the first multi-season series about the life of Jesus, and it is amazing. High quality, not cheesy or corny. The quality of the acting and the production are phenomenal. It's been watched by over 108 million people as of December 22, and it's been translated in over 600 languages. It's free. You can watch it on Apple TV, Fire TV, Roku. You can go to their website and watch it for free, mirror it to your television. The whole family can watch it. It is amazing. And it follows very closely the biblical account of Jesus, but also takes creative license and goes through some of the backstories. Why was it significant for Peter to catch all those fish that day? It goes through the whole backstory of Peter and his wife and struggling financially. It goes through the backstories of the centurion soldier and of many of the disciples. It even shows Jesus doing things that you never really thought that he would have to do, like prepare his sermon. It's a wonderful series, and many people have enjoyed it, Christians and non-Christians alike, and it's a great way to dive deep into the story of Jesus. The Chosen. Check it out. It's a wonderful series by Dallas Jenkins, and I hope that you enjoy it.
Start with these bars. So I want to see if you can name these bars that I'm about to recite to you so we can have a conversation. Definitely a legend. I'm even give you some hints. A legend. This is a legend right here. Okay? A legend in hip hop. Come on now. Who do you think you are? Ha ha ha, bless your soul. You really think you're in control? I think you're crazy. I think you're crazy. I think you're crazy, just like me. Name those bars. Now you really should get this.
I don't know.
It's not that hard.
I don't know.
You don't know?
Nah, go ahead.
You want me to repeat it again, or you just want me to tell you?
Nah, just go ahead and tell me.
This is Gnarls Barkley. Crazy.
Oh, man. We've been listening to this for like half an hour.
Right.
Wow. Wow. See?
I said it shouldn't
Wow.
have been. It shouldn't have been too hard.
Yeah, you gave me like a half an hour hint. Like literally, we've been driving around listening to this song.
Yeah. So we went to go get the coffee. I played this.
All right.
We went to go get the bagel. I played
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, that's epic fail on my end. Okay.
So this is a
man.
legend right here.
Wow,
this
that is crazy. That's crazy.
This is CeeLo Green, legend in hip hop from the Dungeon family.
Yep.
Originally started with Goody Mob.
Yep.
You know,
Goody Mob.
older big brothers of Outkast. You know, just to give a little bit of context.
Yep.
And so this is his. You would describe maybe his coming out party. You know, as a solo artist or out of the Dungeon family.
Yeah.
And so created this song, which was more singing, but I want to label him as still part of the hip hop family, even with this song right here.
For sure.
Crazy, Gnarls Barkley. So let me read it for you again. I want you to give me your thoughts on these verses and what you,
man,
in the context, maybe.
You got me on that.
So crazy, Gnarls Barkley. Come on now. Who do you think you are? Ha ha ha. Bless your soul. You really think you're in control. But I think you're crazy. I think you're crazy. I think you're crazy. Just like me.
Wow.
Crazy by Gnarls Barkley.
Wow. Well, amazing. Amazing song, and it does. It fits in a certain kind of pocket in hip hop, which just like you already said that. You know, just there's some artists that have been able to kind of transcend. You know, bring a little bit of the R&B over, into the same, kind of sharing cultures there, but. Yeah, that song, I think lyrically, just kind of when you listen to it, it repeats itself, a lot.
Very simple song.
Yeah, very simple song that says a lot. What I take from that is, really bringing in the conversation that you're really not different than I am. That we both have whatever this is conversationally that we're talking about. So you may look at me and think that I'm one way, but then when I look at you, I see the same thing. I think that's a very worthy place to begin the conversation when we talk about relationships, because a lot of times we're looking across the table at somebody and we're seeing them, so we think clearly. But the question is, how clearly do we see ourselves?
Yeah.
Which then I think can inform the conversation of how clearly we can see them. So here he's saying, I think you're crazy, just like me, which means that he's come to the realization that he's crazy. So he obviously has had an honest conversation with himself. And so now when he looks at across the table, he's like, you're not so different than I am.
Yeah.
But that's what I take from that.
So I want to start with the first part of the bar that I actually shared with you.
Okay.
And I want to ask you a question. Have you ever asked anyone in a relationship this same question?
Okay.
Who do you think you are? Have you ever asked anybody in a relationship, who do you think you are?
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah, of course. Right?
Yeah. You think somebody's taking a high ground and they're one-upping you, and who do you think you are?
Right.
Looking down on me or talking to me like that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's our goal today. I wanted us to get into the conversation of learning to rest in relationships, learning to be present in relationships.
Right. So when you think of resting in relationships, as far as like, let's say with that particular, verse, like, what brought you to that? I mean, how do you, when you were thinking about this topic, what brought you to that particular song?
Same person that you can love is also the same person that you can hate. The same person that you want to hold hands with is the same person that you want to be frustrated with.
Right.
same person that you can't wait to share everything that you have in your life with is also the same person that you can't wait to get away from.
Right. Right.
And so, like, when I think about like this song from CeeLo Green through the alias of Gnarls Barkley, I think about that idea of the tension where he says, I'm crazy just like you. Mm-hmm. Because I think that the reality of both love and hate is a crazy conception.
Right.
The fact that the person that you love the most can also at the same time drive you up the wall at the same time.
Right.
Frustrate you.
Right.
So this was definitely like my first choice to begin to recognize when you're at that moment, when you're at those places, how do you slow down and rest in your relationship? And the idea for me, resting has a lot to do with calm yourself. Mm-hmm. Has a lot to do with removing the tension.
Right.
Has a lot to do with that kind of idea.
Like Nilda and I think when we first met, and I'm just being transparent here, we really put a lot of cards on the table, because we just wanted to, have good communication and kind of know where we were in as far as in our personal lives and what things were, things that we just couldn't go for. You know what I mean? Like things that you can't stand for. I mean, you're setting your boundaries and your limits. This is who I am. This is where I am in my life, and these are my boundaries. And so, we had a very good conversation about, how, respect and how we would talk to one another and how we would communicate as a couple. And so what we did is basically decided that, because you were talking about like whenever there's conflict or whatever, being able to slow down. Well, one way of being able to slow down is to be quiet, because being quiet causes you to slow down, right? Because you can't go, because you've put something on pause, which is your mouth. You get what I'm saying? And so basically, if we have disagreements, to a certain degree, we're gonna write a letter, or we're gonna type out something to one another. That's something that we put in the DNA of our marriage. So when we're upset at one another, that's when it's time for you to just be quiet, and go find out how you can communicate what it is that you're upset about. And so being able to slow down, I think you have to have, I don't want to use the term rules. I'm going to say limits. It's no different than, driving through, Houston. You got stop signs. You got, all of these things that's telling everyone how to stay in their lane. I think in relationships, since we're talking about resting in relationships, if we don't have clear things to keep us in our lanes, then we can't rest in our relationships, because we're all over in lanes that we shouldn't be in. And the way to do that, in a way that can be very destructive, is actually with our mouths.
Right.
When we're talking, when we're saying things, we can run all over into things that we really have no business really talking about, or that have nothing to do with the situation. So, for us, it's been very, very helpful. The thing is, also, I would say about that is there have been many, many letters, and I know that Nilda probably can say the same thing, that you may start writing, and then you think to yourself, like, this is dumb. Mm-hmm. Like, why am I even addressing this? It's not even that big a deal. Right. And then you end up deleting that and going on. If we didn't have those limits, those dumb letters, we would have had dumb arguments. Right. You see what I'm saying? But if we didn't have the limit of, okay, so you're upset right now, your voice is getting a little, right, inflection is happening there. This is where you need to just pause and you need to say nothing else. Right. And so it's not that I have to tell her that or she has to tell me that. We have decided that we tell ourselves that. Right. So that's what we do.
And one of the rules that we are developing, I wouldn't say that we've gotten there yet. One of our rules in relationship, my wife and I, is not yelling at each other. I think that's a huge rule for me that I want to make sure that we continue to work for. And I'll be honest with you, we're not completely there yet. but it is like a huge goal. I don't think that that's healthy for either one of us to be yelling at one another. I think that it shows like a lack of value toward each other, and a lack of respect to each other, and a lack of love to one another. But so I think that that's this interesting conversation, that the same person that you passionately love is the same person that you might want to yell at. So thinking about that idea of craziness, asking yourself, who do you think you are?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. That's the getting in the wrong lane, right? Who do you think you are? So now you become parental. You're yelling at someone as if, this person is, your child. At least that's what, but, where we're from, I mean, that's what they would say. Like, you're not my mom, you're not my dad, who do you think you are? But I think that it is important for us to set, those boundaries, because I believe rest is intentional. I don't think we accidentally stumble into intimacy, whether we're talking about with God or even with one another.
So my wife and I, we were just having this conversation, this week to I guess you would say, set up those proper boundaries, set up those proper rules and things of that nature. And what we come to realize is that sometimes things just build up over time.
Yeah.
And when things build up over time, before you know it, there is a powder keg situation that is ready to, explode and ready to erupt. And you might not even realize you're at that kind of place. And so, even thinking about like not only having the boundaries themselves, but actually recognizing that there are certain things that you feel, certain things that you think, and there needs to be a place where you process that. There needs to be a place where you have a good communication with one another, in that regards. Because, you can have a rule and say, hey, this was not what we won't do. But how do you make sure that you don't get to that place where the rule even becomes an option,
We call it, airing dirty laundry, like there should be a time. It doesn't have to be a time per week or how often. It depends on the rhythms of your relationship, where whoever that the person is. I think this is healthy. We're talking as far as marriage is concerned, but it could be healthy in any relationships that you care about.
Yeah, and we want to talk about every relationship,
right?
I think we can start from the context of the marital relationship, because it is the most intimate, the most intense relationship. But the same kind of things that we're talking about relationship-wise happens in friendships.
It does.
It happens on the job.
Families, the same thing. So that whole dirty laundry, airing dirty laundry conversation is that if you and I, have a time where we get together and, I actually, put that out there and say, bro, I need to talk to you about something. And, and from my tone, you can tell that this is one of those moments, right? That the respect would be given then, that I would be able to share with you whatever it is that's on my heart, and that you don't correct me because I'm sharing what's on my heart. Now, you can ask questions for me to clarify, but you got to let me get that out. And at the end of that, your choice will be either you walk away, say, let me get back to you on that because maybe you need processing time, or you apologize. Those are the only two options, really. If you need time to process it, then you can come back and we'll have a dirty laundry time, for you, where you get to say, bro, the other day when you talked to me about that, this is how I felt about that. Now, the reason it's important, I think, to set it up, that way is because when a person is actually sharing truth with you, a lot of times we cut people off and we find ways to minimize what it is that they're saying and they're feeling, and that will never be healthy. The healthiest thing that you can do in a relationship is allow someone to communicate their truth, whether you agree with it or not. Yeah. That's a very, very important and a healthy thing to do.
I want to say you just brought a loaded gun to the conversation.
What's that?
I think you brought a loaded gun to the conversation because words have so much power.
Yes.
Words are tremendous. And so even giving somebody a space to be able to say how they feel and not respond back, to me, is a dangerous situation. And I'll say why, because if you don't already have like a respectful conversation, a respectful stance to the other individual, you can unload some things that are dangerous to be said from one perspective to another. So I'm just thinking about it from the perspective of, like, if you got a lot of stuff that you want to share that's your dirty laundry, but you're not coming at it, you're not saying it in a loving and a respectful way to that other individual, and that's like bringing a gun, to a knife fight.
But I would say that goes without saying, right? Because, like,
no, I think you got to say it.
Okay, then we'll put it this way. If you back up, then before you get to that point of I need to say this, right? It's important for you to have those boundaries in your relationship. Like, respect is a boundary.
Respect is a boundary.
And me knowing what respect is to you, not respect to me. What does Joseph see as respect?
Right.
Joseph doesn't appreciate people raising their voice at him. He's my dude, so I know, like, even if I'm upset with him, I got to handle this guy a certain way.
Right.
If we don't have that, then you shouldn't have the opportunity. The whole idea of airing dirty laundry is for people that have those boundaries.
Yeah.
If you don't have those boundaries, then you don't get to do that.
Right.
You get what I'm saying?
That's the
Because I'm
point
not
that
going to be your
making.
punching bag, and I'm not going to be, your pinata.
That's the point I'm making.
Yeah. So okay. So I'll say that whenever we
before
talk
you
with
say
people
this-
about this, we always talk with them about the boundaries first.
Yeah.
Because if you don't know the person and you don't have a relationship with them that allows for this sort of conversation, then this is not for you.
Yeah.
This is for people that have an intentional relationship that is we can say, if we're talking husband and wife, that's intimate, or a close friendship or a family or something like that, where you guys respect one another's boundaries on the front end. So then when we go to, airing dirty laundry time, I know whenever I talk to you, I'm going to talk to you a certain way. Joseph, can I share with you some things that's on my heart?
Yeah.
I already know what your buzzwords are. I know how you feel about certain things. I'm just going to put this out there, and I'm going to package it in a way that you can understand it, whether you agree with it or not.
Right.
Because my goal is for you to understand how I feel.
Yeah.
My goal is not to get you to agree with me.
Yeah.
And then I leave it there.
So that dirty laundry conversation, I just wanted to say this.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And get your perspective on it as well. When you're having this time of dirty laundry, it takes a lot of trust to have this conversation.
Absolutely.
A lot of trust.
Absolutely.
So if you don't trust the individual,
Doesn't work.
how do you give somebody the room to just say, what dirty laundry that they have in the situation? So trust should be part of one of those boundaries that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Respect should be part of that boundary.
Yeah.
Love should be part of that boundary.
Yeah.
That you're not saying something that's intentionally trying to hurt somebody.
Yes. Another thing I would throw into is commitment. Mm-hmm. Like, if you're not committed to the relationship, then you shouldn't even do that. Mm-hmm. You get what I'm saying? Like, if it's, how some people are like pretend friends. A pretend friend for me is like, let's say we meet at a conference or whatever. I give you my business card, you give me mine. We may talk a few times, but we're not really gonna like be close or anything like that. But we need to keep that what it is. Don't you have to take an honest look at your relationships. Sometimes we get outside of the boundaries of particular relationships because now we're trying to treat this person like we're closer to them than we actually really are. And sometimes people will approach you with that, like they're really close to you, and that gets to like, who do you think you are? Mm-hmm. Like, you're acting like we're really close, but we're really not. I didn't give you permission, to travel into this lane and talk to me that way. And so how many times have you been in situations where people have kind of gotten out of pocket with you and maybe said things that they thought that they had the permission to say, but really you never gave them the permission to do that. So paying attention, in a relationship, being honest with, okay, this is where we are. We're he's a cool guy. We're kind of pretend friends, but I don't try to, speak into his relationship, tell him things about his wife, or I'm not trying to, be something in this person's life that I'm not. Because, relationships, take time, take commitment, take trust, needs to be built. All of these various components, communication needs to happen. You don't just assume just because somebody's friendly with you that you just have the right to tell them how you feel, or tell them what's on your mind, or we're going to have a dirty laundry conversation because, back there, the way that you talk, just I think that we make a lot of mistakes, especially as Christians, because we think this idea of, I'm just speaking the truth, I'm just telling them the truth, that's an excuse to be rude,
right,
or to step out of bounds, in a relationship that's just developing.
Yeah, that's why I bring that point up when you talk about airing your dirty laundry, because for a lot of people that is described as expressing their truth. But the conversation that we're having right now has a lot to do with learning to rest in your relationships.
Correct.
And if you're resting in your relationships, it means that there's a contrast between the intensity.
Part of this conversation of rest is that when you have trust in a relationship and you have commitment and you've set boundaries and you know how to talk to one another and you're invested in a relationship, that you are able to say how you feel, and that person cares enough about you that they'll process it and they'll respond properly, respectfully, in their time with how they feel. This is communication. So that the emotion or whatever vibe you're feeling at the moment does not rule the day. What rules the day is speaking the truth in love. What rules the day is patience. What rules the day is peace. All of the fruits of the Spirit, all of the things that would come into play that allow us to represent Christ, or represent a godly, have a godly presence in the midst of conflict. Because relationships, if you think a relationship's never going to have conflict, then that's not realistic. Every relationship has conflict, but how we deal with it and how we represent, Christ, I'm going to say, in the midst of that is an imperative.
Yeah, and I use the word, how do we rest in the midst of those conflicts?
There you go.
How do we
rest? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's an important piece of it. But de-escalating and having a pressure valve where we can actually have honest conversations with one another in a respectful way is a way, I think, to live perpetually in rest in a relationship. Because then there's no worries. Even if the same, and I'm going to say this even about us, right? Let's just say that one day I do or say something, that offends you, right? And I don't even know I did that. I just believe that because of how we conversate and how we interact with one another, I believe that you could let me know that and we would have a conversation about that without it ever, peeking out of a particular, anger or anything like that, because we talk like this all the time. And so I believe that, and I would say that I trust you. I trust that if you came to me and you brought something to me, that you're not being nitpicky, that this is something that really impacted you. And you get what I'm saying? And so all of that trust is built over time. It's built over, time of interacting with someone so that our relationship becomes more restful. Because if we didn't have that, and I'm sure that I'm not the only person that has relationships like this, there are some people that you have relationships with that aren't restful because you're afraid to even talk or even be yourself in a relationship because you don't know, like, man, I'm going to say something. This person seems like they're always upset about something. I don't know how to talk. I don't know how to walk around them. That's not restful at all, because they may not talk to you. They may block you on the phone. You know what I'm saying? So it's not restful to be around people that you don't have these ability to actually conversate and be honest with, and have that in return. Yeah,
one of the things I'm thinking about right now is I guess you would call it rules. I'm calling
that's not a good word, but
calling it kind of a game plan.
Yeah.
One of the game plans that my wife and I are establishing,
limits as well,
is making sure that we're the most important person in the room to each other.
I like that.
And I think that that's helpful in that regards when you talk about making sure that the other person has the space to feel like they can talk, has the space to feel as though that they're appreciated and they're not walking on eggshells. If you think of that person as the most important person in the room, it kind of changes the perspective of how you walk in that room and the things that you do and the things that you would say and how you would most importantly treat that person. So,
Yeah, I like that. That's a great piece.
Mm-hmm.
That's I think a foundational piece of it,
Amen.
of the whole conversation.
Amen.
Of rest would have to be priorities.
Priorities. And when I'm busy in work, if anybody comes into the room, they're a second priority to the work. But now if you're making a statement that, you're always the priority, you're always the most important thing in the room, then you're more important than the work, you're more important than the book, you're more important than the laptop, you're more important than the sports show, you're more important than the media that I'm looking at, you're more important than the phone. That's a way for us to make sure that the priority is the priority.
I love that. Yeah. That's good. That's good. Most important person in the room. Yeah. Yeah, I think that actually, as a foundational piece, would solve a lot of issues as well, because it allows for the space, right? When that person feels important,
right.
They feel like they can take the space.
Mm-hmm.
Like when they say, I really need to talk to you, that you're like, yeah, okay. Turn the TV off, or take your earbuds out, and like, let's talk.
Right.
Just that, even before the conversation, you just spoke.
Right. Yeah.
Even before the conversation. Yeah, that's powerful, man. That's great. Yeah.
That's good. So you got a bar for us?
Okay. Let me know right now.
Let me know right now.
What if it ain't no future in us? Why? 'Cause 1 too close to 0, got to keep something on tuck. She like, ooh, you do too much. I replied, you don't do enough.
She do too much. I replied, you don't do enough. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So Glorilla, Moneybag Yo.
Okay.
And the name of the song is On What You On. Can't say I recommend the song. The song has, it's an interesting song. But from an artistic perspective, which is how I would look at this, the song is really about relationships. It's really about the idea of being on what you on.
On what you on.
I'm on what you on.
Right. So I heard that in the bar. What does
Yeah.
that? What do you think that means? I'm on what you on.
So basically, I'm doing what you're doing.
Okay.
What was your bar about being crazy?
Yeah. Who do you think you are?
And then it goes further.
Ha ha ha. Bless your soul. You really think you're in control?
Keep going.
I think you're crazy.
Uh-huh.
I think you're crazy.
Uh-huh.
I think you're crazy just like me.
I'm on what you want.
I'm on what you on.
So you crazy, I'm crazy. We both crazy. So this idea of what he's saying is that
I like it. I like it. I like it. I like it.
Yeah.
Never heard of the song. Only heard of the names.
Yeah.
In surface, but I like how you broke that down.
Yeah. So tell me what your thoughts are about that.
That's my thoughts.
Yeah,
Mad props to being able to tell the story, of two people seeking relationship with one another. I mean, I really like the breakdown. I can't say that what the song sounds like, but I like the breakdown.
Well, can't really say I recommend the song. I'm just giving a view of the art, and understanding the expression, because I think that they're both tremendous storytellers. And so when you look at it from that perspective, there's a story that's being told. There are two young people that, as I'm seeing the song, in my mind, two young people that are looking at one another from a particular vantage point, and they're doing hurtful things to one another, and their excuse is that I'm on what you're on. So the reason I'm tripping is because you're tripping. Or as it relates to the song that you get, the reason I'm crazy is because you're crazy. You're crazy just like me. Mm-hmm. So I'm on the same thing that you're on. And I think that happens a lot in relationships. I think people respond a certain way because they think that they're seeing certain things. Maybe they're seeing it clearly. Maybe they're not. But if there's no trust, if there's no communication, if there's no true commitment, because Moneybag Yo says it in there, is there a future in us? So see, already there's no real commitment. He doesn't know where they stand. And so that's an important part of the conversation as well as it pertains to relationships. How committed are you? Is this a real thing?
I like that. I like
Yeah.
that. What resonates with me, shout out to Resonate.
Shout out.
What resonates with me in that lyric is I'm on what you're on. And I've definitely been in that situation when, we talk about who do you think you are, the aggression. Somebody gets aggressive, you want to get aggressive back. It's just like, it's this natural response. Okay,
Yeah.
you're going to go there, so I'm going to go there with you.
Yeah.
If you want to play like that, I'm going to play there with you.
Yeah.
That's an extremely true reality, but I would also say it's an extremely unhealthy response too. Made me think about this word that I wanted to get to as well, that we really didn't unpack while we were talking about the song by Gnarls Barkley, Crazy.
Okay.
Is the word offense.
That's it. Yeah. That's a great conversation.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I like to get to that word offense a little bit. And you can talk about offense in relationships. You can talk about offense in friendships. You can talk about offense in business, in community. But that word offense is really, really extremely powerful because it deals with how we relate to people and how we relate to one another.
Yes.
And I'm on what you on is like how we respond to offense. Because you offended me.
Yeah.
Now let me offend you.
Right.
Let me come right back at you. When I think about like this conversation of rest, where you think about where you're at in context of relationship with others, how you respond to offense has a lot to do with the success of your relationship.
Wow. Yeah.
And how you
Yeah.
offend somebody,
Yeah.
has a lot to do with the success of a relationship.
I totally agree with that. I think it's important. You really do know where you are, in times of challenge, in a relationship. How you fight it's very important to pay attention to that, because if there's no conflict, there's no tension, then it's very easy for everyone to just, toast and, dance around and, walk on the rose petals. But, when things are adverse and when you're challenged, how do you respond in those moments? Because that really tells the true picture of where you are in your relationship. It's like that with anything. What do you do when you get a car? You test drive it, you go out and you want to see how it responds to, curves and, adverse conditions. That's how you judge a tire. I mean, there's so many things like that we do that with, right? We want to know how much, what's the capacity of our computers? If I download this, how's it going to respond? Well, it's the same in relationships. Like, not that you should test people. You don't have to test people because life will test you. There's no need to test anybody. Just keep living, as my grandmother would say. Life will test you, and you'll find out where you are. But at those times, it's really important to slow down and ask yourself, how am I responding to adversity? Mm-hmm. How am I responding? I see sometimes even with families, people be like, even with their own families, I could take them or leave them. I've heard comments like that. So you mean this is your family and you can take them or leave them? So there's no level of commitment there? All of that is very, very important as it pertains to relationships. So a lot of people don't necessarily know how to function well on a team. And I want to say that is repairable. Like, you can learn how to function on a team. They say, I don't play well with others. Yes, but you can learn how to play well with others. If I know that I don't work well on a team, then maybe I should seek out, some help, some advice, some wisdom, and learn how I could maybe work better, on a team. There are things that are skills that you can learn that can help you. Communication can help you. Maybe there's some things you need to work through that's inhibiting your trust, because sometimes that's where trust comes from. Sometimes we already come to a team with baggage, and then we're looking at you cross-eyed thinking that you're doing us wrong, but actually it's the lens that I brought with me that causes me to not see you clearly. So I need to be aware that, oh man, I got this baggage. I got some stuff I need to work through so that I can properly be a healthy team member, for Joseph.
So I'm sitting here thinking about teams now, because you brought this to the conversation. The very first thing I think about, again, is just the word priority.
That's a good
do we
word.
even prioritize teams
Yep.
as a value in our life? And then secondly, because this conversation is about rest,
Yeah.
learning to be able to rest in relationships,
Right.
the opposite of rest in a relationship or in community or on a team is to leave.
Wow.
I
get you.
Whether or not it's family, whether or not it's a team on a job, whether or not it's a church,
Yep.
whether or not even it's a relationship.
Yep.
There's a tendency for us just to leave the situation.
Yeah, but I think sometimes we think that quitting is resting.
Yeah.
That just because you quit something, that means that you're resting. And I think that's that can definitely be a deception. Because you could quit something and literally take your chaos with you. Take all of the drama with you. Where basically you're still not rested because you haven't resolved. Sometimes these situations that we're in, there's a blessing in it, and we literally quit before we receive the blessing. Rest, let's say in community, can't happen by myself. I have to do it in community. So if there's something to be achieved in that community and then I quit, I can't then on my own achieve what we could have achieved in the community. It's the same thing. If you're talking about a marriage relationship like that, where a person, perhaps there's a tension, but then there's a blessing on the other side of tension. If you just learn, how to work through that, one day you'll sit back and you'll be so happy that you'll be at rest. You'll be like, oh man, we made it through a difficult time and just look at this now, right? But if you quit, you never get to sit on the other side of that. You never get to sit on the other side of that. And so I think that we need to be very, very careful not to get quitting confused with resting. Because resting, this idea of, abiding, trusting, this idea of being at peace, this idea of, abiding in this and enjoy, being present. I mean, these are all words that we use for rest. That's not the same as quitting. Quitting is the exact opposite. That's why I understand what you said when you said the opposite.
Right.
If I quit, I'm not present. I'm not abiding. I'm doing the opposite of that. So I kind of understood when you said that.
Yeah, so we should talk through that in a healthy manner. And that, what I referred to, is helping each other and then helping anyone who's listening in this conversation of how do we really deal with a situation where it's tense, stressful, maybe for you difficult, where you don't have an answer. So we're talking about how to learn how to still abide in relationship in those kind of situations. We really should talk about that. What does it mean to rest by abiding, rest by trusting, rest by being present,
Right.
in the midst of tension, in the midst of difficulty?
Yeah, well, I think what you said about priorities is kind of the first thing we have to ask. I mean, how important is this to us? And are we willing to sacrifice and put forth, the intentional effort that it takes to do that? There's a passage where Jesus comes on a boat, and the Bible says he goes to the stern of the boat and finds a pillow. I mean, there's some intentionality to getting on a boat and saying, I'm going to find a place to rest. And I don't know if we do that in relationship well. Like, where can our relationship land? Where can we rest? That we'll pursue that, that journey, And so all of the things that would seem so important that would distract us, from that journey, that we minimize those things, because there goes the conversation of priorities. We minimize the things that's taking us away from rest, and we maximize the things that are helping us on the journey to rest.
Yeah.
We maximize those conversations. We maximize those efforts. We maximize the energy that's taking us into this place of rest, and we minimize all that other drama. Not that it's not important, but it goes into the peripheral.
Yeah. So I want to speak to that in two different ways, through two examples. One of the things that I've realized that I've truly appreciated by having a year sabbatical is being able to pull back.
Yeah.
And when I pull back from work, it meant that I was actually more present at home.
Right.
And being more present at home gave me and gave my wife and I an opportunity to put more into our relationship and put more into the time that we'd actually be together. And I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah.
I know that one of the things that we really emphasized during that time was praying with one another, and not just for one another, but praying with one another, which means just simply praying about things that we could be grateful for God for, asking Him to help us in different situations, but doing this in a consistent rhythm,
Right.
Which we probably honestly hadn't been doing before that, you know. And I think that was really valuable for us. But I love the idea of being able to share like an expression of what it actually means, of what do you prioritize? Because in order for us to place more emphasis in our relationship, it means that I had to sacrifice a little bit. And that sacrifice was natural through the sabbatical. But,
Right.
Sometimes it's not natural through a situation like that. You got to intentionally, sacrifice in order to prioritize the relationship. The second thing I think about is hip hop. And I love what I hear over time, where I hear groups have said that in order to make this album, we went to a disclosed location,
Right.
and we just connected with each other before we actually made music.
They had to get away from their familiar surroundings. Yeah.
Yeah. So I remember hearing the RZA from the Wu-Tang Clan, and that's my favorite group of all time. If anybody doesn't know, they should know.
Right.
My favorite group of all time talked about, like, when they used to make their very first albums, that they would all live in the same roof. Whether or not it was Staten Island,
Right.
or when they got the Wu Mansion in Jersey, I believe, or even that they spent some time in Los Angeles.
Yeah, they had a mansion out there.
Yeah, they would all just get together, share fellowship with one, or share community with one another, live in the same space, eat with one another, and you're sacrificing some other things in life to actually do something that is first a priority. So just think about that. Like, when you think about the need to value community, there are some intentional things that actually take place when you're talking about valuing community.
Yeah, that's so true. But ego oftentimes will, take us to, will keep us from being present where we are. So if once ego kind of dips in, then it's kind of our priorities shift, and we become the priority over the collective. And so you can be on stage with someone, but in your mind, you're thinking about the stage that you're on by yourself, instead of, really being present in the moment, abiding in the moment with the people that you're blessed to share time and space with.
Yeah.
And so, I think that reality, you find a lot of groups that have made iconic projects. I mean, iconic projects. I'm not talking about the, just a good project.
Right.
Timeless projects. Most of them, I'm just thinking through after you said that, most of them went through that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's not like you sending, hey, I need a feature on my album.
Right.
I need you to send me
Right.
a 16 bar. I
Right.
need you to send me a beat. I hear some of the great iconic music that we have appreciated and experienced came from this time of being able to commune and spend time in community with one another before it actually happened.
Wow. That's so true.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so true. That's huge. It's a huge point.
it makes me think of the definition that I truly have for rest. And when I talk about being at rest, I really believe for me it means being present with myself, being present with others, and also most importantly being present with God.
Yep.
You know, that's my definition of resting. And so as we talk about like resting in relationship, learning to simply be present with others.
Yeah.
Whether or not it's the spousal relationship that you have, or also this group dynamic that you've actually shared with us. I really appreciate, that group dynamic to help us further that conversation of learning to be present with others, and the sacrifices that actually takes to actually be present, so you can actually there's two ways to think about this. So you're present with others so that the relationship flourishes, but also there's a second component that happens when you are present with others. You're able to eventually do something great.
That's true.
And we learn that through music, through art, through things in business. We learn how just developing relationship is just so important before you can actually go to the next steps and do something great together.
Right. Right. So. I totally agree with that. Yeah, I have the same definition. I think about being present as an enormous expression of rest, and the challenges to being present as challenges to rest. So that journey is I think kind of full of distractions. That journey to rest. That's why there has to be an intentionality to it. So if I want to be present, there's a journey to being present that's going to most of the time have to do with me prioritizing being present over the distractions. And that's not saying the distractions aren't important. It's saying that they're not as important as being present. Mm-hmm. Because being present, if you prioritize it as the most important thing, then you'll get to the rest of that stuff later, but you have to be present first. Mm-hmm. So we can talk, you see what I'm saying? So I think what you're saying in priority is such an important piece of it. There's in Psalms 46, there's I think verse 10 in the Message says something like, step out of the traffic and take a long, loving look at me. This is what it says in the Message. God speaking, take a long, loving look at me, or a long, loving look at God. So stepping out of the traffic simply means that if I'm in the traffic, I am trying to get someplace, but I have to know when it's time to step out of the traffic so that I can take a long, loving look. I think of that like NASCAR. The lack of rest in our lives would be like being a NASCAR driver who never takes pit stops, or doesn't prioritize them, doesn't take them serious. So you think just because you're performing well and you're leading the pack that it's going to go well for you, when you don't have the rhythms and you're not listening to the person that's telling you that it's time to step out of the traffic. And you're like, no, but I'm in the lead and I got a fast car. Well, yeah, but there's a team of people. You see what I'm saying? You're still a member of a team. And the person, that's talking to you right now is the leader. They know more than you know. They're sitting high. They can see the whole field. They know how many laps you have. They're keeping track of everything. They know how much gas you have. They know, how much tread is on your tires. The only thing you're looking at is where you are placed in relation to those that you are competing with. You're in your mind, you're successful. In their mind, you're about to fail. So being able to step out, that's rest. Rest is I'm pulling over, in this moment, and I'm prioritizing that over all things. Whenever I'm asked to pull over, I pull over. Because I have faith and I have confidence that if I pull over, the best things are going to happen for me. Because I'm racing out of rest, not for rest. I'm not racing to get to the finish line, right? The finish line, I know I'm going to get to the finish line. I just need to rest in order to make it there. If I don't rest, there is no finish line for me. But if I rest, I know I'll finish.
Yeah, I do want to say this as we continue this conversation and even, start to land the plane in this conversation.
Okay.
I would love to remind myself and remind each other and share with others who may not share the same sentiment that oftentimes the process is the success more than the goal and the prize at the end of the day being the success. You know, and I need to hear that consistently and realizing that many times when you're trying to do something in life, you have these big objectives, you have these big goals, and you're trying to get somewhere. But oftentimes in the eyes of God, the process in which you get there is more important than just simply getting there. And the process always deals with people, and the process always deals with relationships.
It does. It would truly be God's grace if we can look at our lives and place a high value on the people that God's blessed us to journey with, and not just look to where we're going. That we realize that the process and the moments that we have with the people that God's placed in our lives it's a treasure in and of itself.
Yeah.
And I think that's what our Lord just kind of places a high value on that. And I believe we should as well. I think we miss the most important things in life when we don't.
Yeah.
So relationships are that.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, to be honest with you, this has really spoken to my heart and fed me today. So I thank you, Jervy, for joining this conversation with me on rest in relationships, reminding me and sharing with me the value that we need to place on the relationships that God has given to us, because it's oftentimes the goal that he actually has for our life. So
Absolutely.
That's beautiful. Thank you for joining us today. If you enjoyed today's content, click the like button and subscribe so that you can receive notifications for more of the recordings and information that we'll be sharing. We'd love for you to join us next time. So click that like button and subscribe to the Rest Podcast.